In 2016, a master-planned city rose on 4 artificial islands off the coast of Malaysia, designed for 700,000 residents, equipped with parks, schools, hospitals, and a light rail loop. By 2024, official occupancy sat below 3%, and the developer admitted most purchasers never moved in. Forest City was pitched as a solution to 2 problems at once. Malaysia wanted foreign investment and a showcase for its Iskandar Economic Zone, a special development region near Singapore launched in 2006 to attract manufacturing, logistics, and high-end services. Chinese developer Country Garden saw demand from mainland buyers seeking offshore property during a period when Chinese authorities allowed citizens to move up to $50,000 abroad each year. The project promised a green, car-light city on reclaimed land in the Strait of Johor, with residential towers surrounded by vertical gardens, rooftop solar, and ground levels reserved for pedestrians while vehicles moved through basement roads. Construction began in 2014. 4 islands were scheduled for completion in phases through 2035, with a total built area of nearly 20 million square feet. Early marketing materials showed families strolling landscaped promenades, international schools operating at full capacity, and ferry terminals connecting residents to Singapore in minutes. Country Garden sold units primarily to Chinese nationals, collecting deposits and staging high-profile launch events in major mainland cities. Malaysia's government endorsed the project publicly, calling it a model for sustainable urbanism and cross-border collaboration. The first constraint appeared in 2016, when Malaysian officials grew concerned that the vast majority of buyers were foreign and that most units were being purchased as investment vehicles rather than primary residences. Local politicians questioned whether a city built for offshore buyers would contribute to Malaysia's housing needs or its labor market. In early 2017, Chinese regulators tightened capital controls in response to currency pressure, making it harder for mainland buyers to transfer money overseas. Sales momentum slowed. Then, in 2018, Malaysia's government changed. The new administration reviewed megaprojects approved under the previous leadership and announced that Forest City would no longer be eligible for a special visa program that had allowed foreign buyers to obtain long-term residency. The Prime Minister stated that future property sales would be restricted to Malaysian citizens, effectively closing the offshore buyer pipeline that had financed the first phase. Country Garden's share price fell. Construction on later phases slowed, and some planned infrastructure was delayed or redesigned. The mechanism behind the occupancy gap is straightforward. Most Forest City units were sold to buyers who never intended to live there. They were purchasing for capital preservation, school access for children studying abroad, or speculative resale. When Malaysia restricted foreign ownership and China tightened outbound currency transfers, the investment thesis collapsed. Buyers who had paid deposits faced difficulty completing transactions. Resale buyers disappeared. The units existed, the buildings were finished, but the occupants did not materialize. This created a feedback loop that made recovery nearly impossible. Empty buildings meant no retail customers, so shops stayed closed. Closed shops meant fewer reasons for potential residents to move in. Fewer residents meant the developer couldn't justify finishing planned transit links or community facilities. Without those amenities, the city became even less attractive to the few buyers still considering it. Each absence reinforced the next. By 2020, site visits documented near empty towers. Retail units remained shuttered, schools operated below capacity, and the promised light rail had not begun construction. The developer shifted messaging, emphasizing industrial and commercial tenants over residential sales, and explored partnerships with Malaysian firms and regional logistics operators. Some infrastructure was repurposed. A section of the first island was reconfigured for data centers and warehousing rather than additional housing. The pivot to industrial use revealed another layer of the problem. Forest City's location worked for wealthy homebuyers seeking proximity to Singapore. But logistics and manufacturing tenants need different infrastructure. The site lacked direct highway connections to Malaysian industrial centers. The reclaimed islands added construction costs that made warehouse space expensive compared to mainland alternatives. The basement road system, designed to preserve pedestrian space, created loading complications for freight operations. The cost is visible in financial statements and on the ground. Country Garden reported significant write-downs on its Forest City assets. Malaysian authorities faced criticism for approving a project whose benefits accrued primarily to a foreign developer and offshore buyers, while local workers saw limited employment once construction slowed. Environmental groups questioned the ecological impact of large-scale land reclamation in a marine corridor, although the developer maintained that the project met Malaysian environmental standards. Residents who did move in described a functioning but isolated environment with limited commercial activity, infrequent public transport, and a community too small to support the planned services. One early resident noted that grocery shopping required a drive to the mainland because the on-site supermarket closed within months of opening. Parents enrolling children in Forest City's international school found class sizes so small that some grade levels were combined. The isolation was physical, but also social. With occupancy scattered across multiple towers, neighbors rarely encountered one another. Comparisons to other new town projects show mixed lessons. Singapore successfully developed Jurong and Punggol by integrating employment, transport, and housing in coordinated phases. But those projects were driven by a land-scarce city-state with direct government control over planning and migration. China's own new districts, such as parts of Zhengzhou and Ordos, experienced years of low occupancy before central policies redirected population and industry. Forest City differs because it was designed for foreign buyers in a host country that later withdrew policy support, leaving the developer without a fallback domestic market. The absence of that fallback exposed a fundamental planning weakness. The project assumed that policy support would remain stable and that cross-border capital flows would continue. It built no redundancy into its demand model. When the offshore buyer market disappeared, there was no local population wealthy enough or numerous enough to absorb hundreds of thousands of units. Malaysian household incomes could not support the pricing structure that had been set for international investors. Some units eventually found occupants. A small number of Malaysian buyers, retirees from Singapore, and expatriate workers moved in once prices dropped and the developer offered incentives. The population remains a fraction of the original target, but the city is not entirely abandoned. Utilities function, basic services operate, and the developer continues to maintain common areas. The question is no longer whether Forest City will be completed as drawn, but whether partial occupancy and adaptive reuse can recover some of the initial investment and provide value to the residents who are there. The developer announced plans in 2023 to convert portions of the remaining undeveloped land into industrial parks and to attract tech companies seeking alternatives to more expensive Singapore real estate. Whether that strategy can generate the employment base needed to support a residential community remains uncertain. The outcome is a megacity built for a market that evaporated before the city could mature. Forest City remains a physical monument to the risks of designing urban space primarily as an investment asset, rather than a place where people live and work. The towers stand, the gardens grow, and the basement roads carry almost no traffic. What was imagined as a green, connected international community is now a test case in what happens when policy, capital flows, and demographic assumptions all shift in the same direction, away from the original plan. The lesson is not that master-planned cities always fail. It is that cities designed around a single buyer profile, dependent on cross-border capital, and lacking integration with local employment or transport systems, carry compounded risk. When one assumption breaks, the whole model can collapse. Forest City's empty towers are not the result of poor construction or bad design. They are the result of a plan that treated housing as a financial instrument first and a community second, in a regulatory environment that proved less stable than the developers expected. Visual reconstructions are illustrative. Facts and interpretations are based on the sources listed in the description.